Hi everybody, I hope that you've all had good weeks so far. The question this week, or the prompt this week from our reading, is how can teachers critically and effectively engage their students, families, and communities? I personally thought that this prompt was really thought-provoking. The whole reason that I'm taking this class is to learn about parent involvement and how we can initiate that more, how we can be better educators and members of our own personal communities. And so this was a good prompt for me as I was reading to really think of how I personally can be a better educator from the things that I'm learning. In our first reading by Jolly, Gandara, and Shields, and I don't know if I butchered that second name, they talk about the impact that we can have on our students. And there was this one little section that really caused me pause, and it says that the bulk of evidence shows that teachers have the most impact on their students. So that means they have the most impact on their students in comparison to anybody else in their educational life. And to me, that's huge. I mean, that really made me pause, and I felt a little bit of pressure and anxiety and just this weight on my shoulders to think of how much we can really do for these young people. And it's so hard to measure what makes a great teacher, and that's what the prompt is. How can we engage our students? So how can we be better teachers? And it's hard to measure something like that. And they talk about that in the first article that we read, that there's so many things that aren't measurable. How do you teach somebody to care for their students? How do you teach somebody to care for their culture, for their background? But then there are some things that are measurable. For example, they said experience is something that's measurable, standardized test scores, teacher undergraduate education, and their pedagogy. So those are things that you can measure. Those are things that you can see. And I would say that I agree with that. If we're working to gain more experience as teachers, I feel like that of course helps us. I think in any profession you should do that. You should work to gain more experience. It's always changing, it's always growing. If we can help our students learn certain materials that we know they're going to be tested on, that we know they're going to need to use in the future, then I feel like that's also important. And if we continue to grow ourselves with our own personal pedagogy and with our curriculum, of course, that's helping our students. So yes, I agree with that. And that in turn helps us to engage their families and our community. I also thought about how important it is for us to be prepared to teach the students that we have and all of their different cultures and their backgrounds and their family life and everything like that. When I was in my first teaching job, I taught at a school that was, I think it was 80% Latinx students, and a lot of them were emergent bilinguals. A lot of them were first generation immigrants with their families. They're incredible, incredible people. And I felt really, really prepared to teach them, just because I had lived in South America for a few years. I'd studied Spanish education and Spanish literacy and the Spanish language, so I really felt like I could interact with them. I could talk to their parents on the phone because I spoke their language. But then I had a student who came in my class mid-year who was from Japan, and I honestly felt so blindsided by her because I didn't know how to interact with her as well. I didn't know as much about her culture. I couldn't really speak with her as well. I mean, she spoke English, but I couldn't speak with her parents, which I felt so bad about. And looking back, I really wish I had done more to understand her. I wish I had gone into her home. I wish I had found somebody who spoke Japanese. And so going forward, I will be so much better to go out of my comfort zone with all kinds of students, not just the ones that I understand their background, but I need to push myself. The last thing I want to mention is something that Swick and Manning said in the second article that we read. And I just loved this. And it says, students' interests, cultures, languages, and literacies must be taken into consideration, and their diversity must be recognized as a resource in the classroom. I love that part. They go on to say, it is our duty as educators to empower all parents to recognize the active role they play in their own children's education. Thus, we need to review closely our attitudes and perspectives about parents and families. Do we foster inclusive approach that values the richness and power of every parent and family? And so that's the last thing I want to say, is that we as educators, to really engage families and communities, need to do just that. Reach out to parents. Make sure that they know that they play such a huge role in their students' lives and their students' education. Make them feel wanted and special and important. And I think that we can change the face of our students' trajectory, and we can really help them grow and experience things and have the support of their parents in the classroom as well as at home. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you guys have a great week.